Hello and thanks for joining us. I'm David Rose. As we put the spotlight on a new rapid DNA testing system that could be rolled out across our state as soon as next year, these mobile devices promise to help detectives quickly focus in on the right suspect from the start of an investigation. From property crimes to violent assaults, the rapid DNA could also keep the wrongfully accused out of prison. Two companies, Thermo Fisher Scientific and Andy Corporation, have developed rapid DNA testing machines that have been approved by the FBI. The devices are about the size of a printer. They're easy to use. Thermo Fisher says someone can be trained to operate its rapid hit system in about half an hour. Former King County Sheriff and Congressman Dave Reichert is a big proponent.
These rapid machines, you can take the DNA swabs at the scene, put them in the machine, 90 minutes, you'll have a DNA profile.
For example, first responders used rapid hit to identify victims after the Surfside condo collapse in Miami.
The process of identifying these victims is very difficult. We're going to be relying on DNA testing.
They took cheek swabs from family members of people missing in the disaster and compared them to samples of bodies found in the wreckage. Similarly, Andy Corporation's machine was used after the 2018 fire in Paradise, California, that killed more than 80 people.
Our huge need at this point is for families that have missing relatives to get swabbed, a parent or a sibling of the folks that are missing.
The devices proved highly effective in the field, quickly putting names to remains and letting families start the grieving. Unlike the highly sensitive machines used in DNA labs that can test tiny samples, like the spit on a cigarette that solved the 1995 murder of Patricia Barnes in Kitsap County, these systems require large cell samples. They need a robust cheek swab from a living person or collection of cells from someone who's dead. The FBI has approved both systems to be used to compare samples with its CODIS database. Now, law enforcement agencies are starting to use them on active cases. In 2017, Bensalem, Pennsylvania, outside Philadelphia, became the first department in the country to make rapid DNA testing part of its booking process.
It's not about necessarily locking up people, it's about preventing the victim tomorrow. And that comes by locking up, getting the criminal off the street today. You give us an hour and a half start, we're gonna get these guys and gals.
That ability to quickly identify the right suspect is something that Reichert hopes will ease tension between police and communities of color.
If I today go to a homicide scene and I swab various bodily fluids, I send them to the lab and I wait 4 or 5 months. But I don't wait on the investigation, I continue, right? So I could be investigating 3 or 4 people, might develop probable cause on 1 or 2, get search warrants, maybe even arrest them, take bodily fluids, that sort of thing. Especially imagine if it's a person of color or underrepresented community member. So it makes the criminal justice system a little more equal in that now is looking at, sure evidence that puts you at the crime scene rather than probable cause evidence.
But the Electronic Freedom Foundation says not so fast.
The idea that the police are just going to collect from DNA from whoever they think that they want to collect DNA from, and then when they find a suspect, they're going to bring that person in, because that sounds like a surveillance state. And I don't personally want to live in a country like that. And I think that's a huge violation of our Constitution and our Fourth Amendment rights.
Last year, lawmakers in Olympia approved $1.3 million to start a rapid DNA pilot program run by the State Patrol. The plan calls for the State Patrol to acquire 3 scanning devices that are in mobile units. Those would be available for disasters and lower-level crimes that aren't already sent to the state's existing crime labs. Snohomic County is one of the local law enforcement agencies applying for a federal grant to purchase one of the rapid DNA machines.
Anytime we can, have another resource or another tool to use to assist us in our investigations, to bring justice to victims, families of victims, I'm not going to say no to it. I'll take whatever we can get.
The technology does have its critics.
In 2017, a Swedish government agency conducted a test of Thermo Fisher's rapid DNA machines and found multiple problems with those machines. And that was testing for single source DNA. So that's DNA where you know exactly where the DNA is coming from. It's just coming from one person.
The ACLU argues that rapid DNA machines are likely to increase wrongful convictions, saying that even professionally accredited labs make mistakes. And officers doing tests at precincts are a recipe for disaster. The Electronic Frontier Foundation also has concerns about how DNA samples are stored after they're collected. Right now, rapid DNA samples can be sent to the FBI's CODIS database to be compared, but they can't be saved in that database. Instead, the samples are sent to state-run databases. That's how it could work here. Samples collected at a crime scene that don't match to a suspect would be saved in the state patrol system to see if they hit against a later sample.
Really, this is the future of crime fighting, like right now, isn't it? I mean, this is not science fiction anymore. That's amazing.
No, yeah, if you've got a team of detectives and they're all following 4 different suspects because you want to make sure you're covering all your bases, right? And if you get a rapid hit and you can use the state database to get that DNA profile hit, then you're focused on one suspect. So it eliminates all kinds of time for the investigators. And it also helps the lab because it helps them with their backup on the rape kits. And it also helps the prosecutor's office because in a lot of these cases, if you go to a suspect and you say, hey, look, I was just at the crime scene 2 hours ago and we got a hit on your DNA and you were sitting on the couch and we found your saliva. What we're finding is they're more likely to give a confession when you have DNA evidence. It's like, it's not a polygraph test. It's pretty final. That's your spit on that couch.
DNA technology is often used successfully to identify human remains. Recently, detectives announced they identified a John Doe found 45 years ago in Snohomic County as a transient Native American man. Detectives also identified a Jane Doe who went missing 41 years ago from her Lake Loma cabin under mysterious circumstances. She's Alice Lou Williams, they know now. And one local mom is hoping to get some answers after her daughter disappeared in 2017. Snohomic County Sheriff's detectives are using this excavator to try to unearth new clues in a case that's more than 4 years old. After Jessica Seabold went missing in late 2017, detectives got tips telling them that she was murdered and buried on this property in Trafton, a community near Arlington. Detectives didn't have enough evidence to get a search warrant, and the persons of interest who lived here would never cooperate. Now, the new owner of the property has given detectives permission to leave no stone unturned. Jessica's mom says she believes her daughter spent her final day here in terror.
It kills me inside to know what she went through, and that the animals are out and running around, and they're going to do it to somebody else's child.
This property sits right along the Stillaguamish River, which is just over that hill. This is the last place that Jessica was known to be seen. When detectives questioned the man who lived here at the time, he told them that the last time he saw Jessica, she came out, walked across this bridge, and went down by the river to talk to Jesus. It's not a story they believe.
They're aware they're suspects, and we do believe they have additional information that they're withholding.
So far, they've recovered bags and bags of buried trash and even furniture, but no human remains yet. They're not just digging. Detectives say they also did ground-penetrating radar, but the problem with that is there is so much trash and junk under here, and also a ton of rocks. It's hard to see anything down there.
Our family needs to be able to say goodbye to her.
For now, Jessica's mom says anybody involved in her daughter's disappearance should be feeling the heat.
They definitely need to be nervous because they're criminals, they're murderers, they're rapists, and they're pigs. They don't belong outside of a jail cell.
Detectives believe there are individuals out in the public who know where she is, and we're asking them to help us find her and get answers for her family.
Right now, the suspect charged with killing a teenage girl in 1993 is sitting in Western State Hospital waiting for doctors to clear him for trial. Snohomic County Sheriff's Detective Brad Walvatne says Alan Dean was identified as a suspect through genetic genealogy. He was arrested in 2020, but his defense attorneys have continued to argue that he's incompetent to stand trial. Melissa Lee was kidnapped from her home during a struggle. Her body found in a ravine the next day in Everett. She had been strangled. To solve a case like this, Detective Walvatne says he starts at the beginning to meticulously build a timeline.
In our office, we have what we call red books, and those red books are the detective copies. And then we have an original file. Yeah, so this is basically our bullpen, and here are all of our red binders of our cold cases that we currently have active. Once all these get reconciled, we're going to get them all scanned and uploaded digitally so we have access to it on the computer rather than paper form. As I started digging through, for example, Alan Dean's case, found original documents in the working copies. Or I'd find originals where they should be in the original file, but a copy wasn't with a detective copy. These folders are all of our originals. So what I'll do is I'll go page by page and I'll reconcile, cross-reference. I'll make sure that everything in there matches what's in here. I put a P, so that means I only did a photograph of it. If I went down here and I did an O, that means I opened up that package. And I can tell it's been down to the lab twice because you have one up here and one down here and then an original seal. So after the detective sealed this up as evidence, this package has been opened twice.
Okay.
Okay. So this is important to us, chain of custody, right?
What's in there?
This is just right fingernail clippings from the decedent at time of autopsy.
Did the lab find any DNA back then?
No. So just an example. Another example, one that I went in there and I made a photocopy of everything because, and this happened quite a bit with Melissa Lee because there's a lot of documents when we processed her bedroom. She had a calendar in there, she had notebooks in there of, she kept a diary of what she did every day, who she was hanging out with. And Alan Dean's name appeared in some of those documents. So it's pretty exciting. You never know, again, what might be in a notebook.
What if you find something with blood on it in one of the envelopes?
Then what I would do is I would generate a new item and I would remove that item, I would document it, I would remove it, I'd book it as a new item and then submit it.
It's incredibly detailed work though.
It is, I love it. It needs to be done. I am identifying all my witnesses, like in this case with yellow. So I want to be able to go through the case and find out, have all these witnesses been contacted? Have they been interviewed? Because believe it or not, a lot of people identified during these cases and they statements have not been obtained.
What does red mean?
So red, I identified in this as possible evidence in this case. I want to know if that has ever been submitted or tested. And then when I have the time, then my next step is do the lab submissions and the results. Then I go back to here and I say, okay, this was submitted for lab. That's my process of how I make sure that all potential evidence that I see, that my belief is evidence, has been examined.
So all of this is setting the stage so you can get to the physical evidence so you can hopefully find something that will lead you to some genetic genealogy.
That's my process. I felt that what works best for me in my case management is to first reconcile, do a timeline, know what's in your case first, okay? And as you're going through your timeline, you're gonna come across evidence items like I'm highlighted here, okay? I mean, it could be cell phone records, it could be DNA, it could be polygraph exams, it could be anything.
Why not just see what DNA you have, send that off, and then if you get something back, then maybe do all that work?
Yeah, it's unacceptable. I mean, is that fair? Is that fair to the state? Is it fair to the person of interest that we arrest for this? I mean, we're not gonna do a half, what kind of job. We want to be thorough. When it goes to the private lab, what we're dealing with that is centimorgans. So basically that just identifies the measure of the relationship. You share 50% of your mom's and 50% of your dad's DNA. And you go back a step to your grandparents, it cuts it in half, 25%, 25%. If we get centimorgans back to, it range between 1,300 to 2,300, you're dealing with a half sibling. Anything between 2,300 and 3,900, you're dealing with a full sibling. So this is the kind of stuff that the genealogists use, and this is what they work off of when they build their trees and try to figure out the strength of the relationship.
And then they go and use public records and find out, just like you would do if you were tracing your ancestry, and then build it all the way down to where you have a couple of likely suspects.
Absolutely. Marriage licenses, divorce decrees, social media is a huge thing. You can go into people's Facebooks or Instagrams and click on things and seeing who people are and who they're related to. So genealogists, they use all that stuff.
What's that like to come into work and you have an email and it's from the genealogist and they say, we think this is your person of interest?
It's very exciting, and the work is just going to start right there.
Goes from cold to very active.
Very active. Once we get the word from the genealogist saying, hey, your person of interest is this individual here, You want to find out where that person's at, because what you want to do is to obtain, their discarded DNA to get that confirmation of what the genealogist is telling you.
What's it like to be able to look at a suspect and say, not did you do it, but I have proof that you did it, that you were there?
When we had Alan Edredine in the interview room, and he chose not to talk to us, and I told him that he was under arrest for the murder of Melissa Lee, he just stared at me, and we walked out of the room, and within 30 seconds he looked up at the ceiling and he said, "I'm sorry," and he made a comment that he knew that will, why we had him there was the reason why.
Detectives are paid to solve puzzles, and Seattle detective Cookie Bolden uses her inquisitive mind and her love of competition to inspire young people to play chess, instilling life lessons through the game. Over the past 15 years, she's inspired so many kids across Seattle's Rainier Valley that they're building a chess park in her honor. Photojournalist Scott Hobson has her story.
Somebody have her. Why not? Well, today is the groundbreaking of the Detective Cookie's Chess Park. This is something we have worked very hard. Yeah. And now our chess park is going to start getting built. And as you can see, we have the giant king and queen, and it sort of watches over the community. It makes sure that the people who are coming in the community, especially our children, that they feel safe and play chess.
Oh, I just like thinking about the game really, so I guess just getting time to sit and think. Check.
I feel like beating some more people in chess today, to be honest with you.
Wendy Fisher, she taught me how to play chess, and I actually told her I'm not smart enough, my brain doesn't get it. And she said, in 30 minutes you'll be playing chess. I went to one of their meetings, in 30 minutes I was playing chess.
I grew up playing football and basketball. I played golf, but I really feel like I needed something a bit more for the mind. And I moved out here, I didn't know anybody. And I came to the rec center and there was a chess club. I tried it. I hadn't played chess in years and I just kept doing it. And I met a lot of cool people.
Their child is more able to calm down and more able to take their time in doing something instead of rushing to action or getting angry. And the goal is to think first, because there are consequences to your actions. And if you move too fast, just like in the real world, you can end up getting arrested, going to jail. But on the chessboard, you can actually get checkmate, lose your queen. The king is the most important person on the board, but the queen, she's the most powerful. And she's the one that's keeping that king safe. A lot of times, yes.
Describe to me.
Just like in real life. Yes.
Yeah, I enjoy playing chess a lot.
Check. It's really more of a social thing, and it keeps me sharp. I feel like it helped my grades a little bit.
I want people of all colors, young and old, to be able to come together over a game of chess.
Because everybody who plays chess always has some profound advice and knowledge about life.
You really don't even have to know the person you're playing. You don't have to speak the same language. And you can sit down and play chess and you can learn about each other and you can become friends like that.
Detective Cookie tells the Spotlight, if you put your mind together and get together, things happen. You can find her chess club every Saturday at the Rainier Beach Community Center. It's from noon to 2 p.m. Even though DNA is being successfully used every day by law enforcement to identify criminals, detectives say great suspect photos and tips from the public are much faster. Take a look at this robbery suspect, for example. Seattle police say this guy in the black royalty printed t-shirt with the Jason mask and the gold crown on it was caught on camera using a victim's stolen debit card. He purchased a couple of packs of Newports at a store on Aurora Avenue North. Police are hoping somebody can identify him, because here's what he did to the victim. He got out of a black Toyota Camry, went up to her, and started attacking her to steal her purse. After about 12 seconds, he flung her to the ground and took off. A witness got a good shot of his car. It has Washington license plate BZY9289 on it. It's the same car you see him getting out of at the store. So no reason to wait on getting DNA from a store receipt to identify him. If you know his name, submit a tip right now to Crime Stoppers through the P3 Tips app on your cell phone for a cash reward of up to $1,000. That's all the time we have on this edition of The Spotlight. Until next time, be smart and stay safe.